Welcome to another episode of DD on the Spot. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Johnson. Before we get into it with our guest here today, I'd like to remind everyone if you enjoy this content to please go like and subscribe down below. I greatly appreciate it. We have Suzie Hanehan on the podcast. She's coming to us all the way from New York. And yeah, she's on here to share her health and fitness journey and just discuss all things health and fitness. But most importantly, she's our current guest. Suzie, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
Well, I'm not even going to talk about the weather. That's one thing that I normally usually ask about, but we're just going to go ahead and skip that. So to get things started, why don't you just give us your backstory on what inspired and motivated you to get in shape and how that led to where you're at right now?
So in high school, I was really, really good at track, beating all the school records. I just wanted a college scholarship. So I kept noticing at the end of all my races, my ass, my legs were just on fire. I'm like, I bet if I had a little bit more muscle, I could complete these sprints and I would have no problem getting a scholarship. So I got a personal trainer who happens to be an IFBB pro bodybuilder as well. And so a year after training with her, she's like, Suzie, why don't you just do a bikini show? At that point, I was 16. I'm like, okay. And I just fell in love with the tan, the glitter, the atmosphere, just all of it. So then I fell in love with the training more so than running. And then I just never looked back. So,
What was that like being a 16-year-old still being well into high school and and people being like, "Wait, she does bikini shows?"
yeah. Yeah. So all my classmates, you show up after having the tan on and they're like, what is she doing? And then I posted all the pictures. They're like, that's so badass. And backstage, like talking to all the girls and stuff, they're like twice my age. I was just bricks just trying to get out there and do my thing. But it was really cool. It was an honor.
What was it like going through prep and still being in high school? Because especially with prep brain and dealing with like homework and everything like that, how'd you manage?
Yeah. So I want to say, like, I didn't take it as seriously as I do now. The first prep was just kind of like any other prep. You're still learning everything. But the hardest part was I was running cross country. So it's like, how do you run all those miles? How do you compete and all of that? And you're still just so depleted. So I would like sneak a half a bagel in before my races just so I wouldn't like faint at the finish line. But other than that, like it was just pretty relaxed the first two shows.
I was gonna say because if you are going like really hardcore when you're like that young, it's like
Yeah.
more power to you. But yeah, again, you still got to go and eat lunch in the cafeteria and everything
Right.
and do all that stuff. So you aren't the first. I mean, I think I talked to like two other ones where they try to do something similar to that, and it's like, first of all, you're that young, just enjoy it. Just enjoy it.
Yeah.
You can take it seriously when you're done. But when you were first getting started, what was probably the biggest shock to you about the sport of bodybuilding? Because so many people that enter this sport aren't that familiar with it, and then they realize that like it is not what the general public thinks it is. The sport.
Yeah, so going into it, like I was oblivious to even steroids in general. I had no idea. I'm like, oh, my coach is like just this big because she trains. And so I'm like, I look at her one day and I'm like, you don't like cheat, do you? Like you don't use steroids. And she's like, like she had to sit down with me. So then that's like when I was very eye opening. I was just like, oh, that's how this really works. So if I learned anything, it would be that side of
I
it.
love how you just said you don't cheat.
Yeah,
She's just like,
because
oh God.
yeah, I know. When I was little, like I had no idea. It's just the general public knowledge and everything. I didn't had no idea how it worked.
No, I mean being a baseball player too. That's how I viewed it. Basically, when I was growing up too, it was like, oh, you're a cheater. You cheat.
Yeah,
That's it's just how hilarious how things change over that. But what were your
right.
friends and family's reaction like when you announced them like, hey, I want to get bodybuilding a try?
Well, they're like, you don't want to get too big, do you? You want to end up like my trainer's name was Tara. They're like, you don't want to get like her, and I'm like, it would be an honor if I could, but I don't know if I'll ever be able to do that. So now they're a lot more accepting of it. They're like, okay, that's Suzie, that's her thing. But at first they were like, just be careful. You can't really go back, once you start this. So yeah.
Well, and we also got to talk about you're at a little bit more of a disadvantage than a lot of other people I talked to with your hand.
Yeah.
Was it something that you were born with, and how have you found ways to adapt with it? Because that was one of the most impressive things when I saw your profile. I was like, wait, she looks that yoked, and she has to deal with that. That's incredible.
Yeah, so I mean, at first it was a lot of just I went a whole year just training legs because we're like, how do we even do this? Like, you can do push-ups, but that's about it. So, my trainer got me a hook thing that you can get on Amazon. It's just for people with arthritis, and I started using that, and then all of a sudden it all came together. I was doing my first lat pull down, my first pull up. I started crying. I'm like, I can do this now. This is insane. So then after that, it was all about trying to create symmetry. I did like 5 or 10 extra reps on this side for 2, 3 years straight. until I finally was about the same size, and now I can just work out normally.
When you're doing like a front double, can you flex as hard on the other arm knowing that like you can't really curl in the arm, or how do you
Yeah,
is it hard for that? Yeah, okay.
no,
Yeah.
it's all there. Like I can still like I have all feeling, I have all muscle. The only thing is like my forearm, it doesn't look like I have all the forearm muscles, but other than that, I'm good to go.
If you were super jacked in your forearms, I'd be like, okay, what the hell, or something like that. Like, but no, it's
Right.
super inspiring. Like, I saw some of the clips of you like doing the workouts and how you've adapted to that. I mean, God, if you ever want to like get into the business, you should just find out who makes that and just be like, hey, let's start selling these things to other people. Because
Yeah.
like I said, I know someone from my personal life that has a similar condition as well, and that's awesome. And do you find that I mean, especially with this lifestyle that the mental side of it that comes as well, where this is so much more of a mental journey than it is a physical journey. And for
Right.
everyone saying, "Oh my God, you look amazing," they won't understand the mental changes happen as well, which is 100 times more important. What has this whole journey been like for you mentally?
Mm, ups and downs, just like anything else. Like I think as far as the actual sport mentally, it's only ever helped me. Like I love training, I love competing, I love all of that. I think it's just outside forces like toxic relationships while trying to bodybuild. That's another side of it. But I think just purely lifting and everything, like it's just brilliant. I love being here. I love training.
When it comes to the gym, though, there are going to be those days where you're not going to be feeling 100%, and where I mean, everyone has them. And if you say you don't, I'll buy it. But like deep down, I'll be like, okay, this is BS. But how do you
Yeah.
cope on those days? Because that's one thing that differentiates bodybuilders from the general public is that general public will find a way to not work out, but then bodybuilders they just somehow find that. Where do you think that that comes from inside of you to push through on those days?
So I guess I think about all the people who can't train. And so I'm like, even though I don't really feel like doing this, like even though I have one hand and that's like a limiting factor, there are people who literally can't even get to the gym, whether they're in like, third world countries or they're just not physically able to, then I'm just like, I got to do it for that person. It's weird. It's a weird way to look at it, but
No, absolutely. I mean, excuse me. There was a guy in my gym who was a Iraq veteran, and he had one leg and one arm, and he would still come in and work out. And I was like, okay, I'm never going to make any excuses again about like not going to the
exactly.
gym. So,
Yeah. Yeah,
but
totally.
But I would give him crap because I was like, dude, you don't even have to squat. I would make funny jokes like that to him, and he would laugh at it. Everyone, I wasn't taunting. It's my little
Yeah.
sarcastic self there, but no, it's and again, like it's just the inspiration that you provide alone is just how much does that mean to you, knowing that you inspire people just by going to a gym and just working out.
Yeah. It's amazing because, you're training and then like the average bodybuilder gets a lot of head turns or whatever, but then I start stacking plates on my arm to start like, doing dumbbell press or whatever, and they're like, "What even?" And so many people come up to me and they're like, "I was gonna stop like 3 sets ago, and then I saw you just bombing them out, and they're like, now I have no choice but to stay another hour." So it's just really cool. I don't really think about it a lot. So then the rare times where I'm in a different gym and people don't know me and they come up to me, I'm like, "Oh yeah, I forgot. Like I got to be on my A game because people are always watching."
Well, when you started working out, I always love to ask, what's one body part that really, really took off for you, and what's been one body part that you just had to drag behind this entire time?
I don't like training arms just because every time I do that hook thing, like it just hits me in just a way where it really kind of hurts and it's annoying. But I love training chest just because I don't need to put that attachment on. I just stack all the plates on here and go for it. So it just feels a lot more natural that way. So
It's ironic that your arms are one of your best features and that you don't like training them. The gym bro in me is like, "Oh, come on." But yeah, hey, again, she has a reasoning for it. But when you do hook that thing on, so like,
Mhm.
are there any other movements that you do other than curls that really put a lot of pressure on it that you don't enjoy?
Not really. I would say anything pulling movement, like back days kind of suck just because that thing's pulling so hard. So the harder that the more that I'm lifting like straight up with it, the harder I have to wrap it. And I have like about 10-15 minutes before the whole thing turns purple. I have to unwrap it again and rewrap it. So it's annoying when I'm trying to train with somebody. They're like, come on, Susie, you're slowing me down a little bit, but that's about it. Yeah.
Don't tell me they're that much of a dick that they actually say,
They're
"Susie, what the hell? Come on, let's
They're
go."
not, but they're like, "Come on," like, they don't wanna wait for the next set and everything, so I kinda train alone most of the time because of
Sorry, I'm
that,
training with Susie today. She's slacking per usual or
but
something like that. It's like, uh,
nobody actually says that, it's more like in my head, I'm like, "Oh, man, I'm the
you're
worst."
such a liability, Susie. Come on now. No, but I mean, yeah, again, if anyone ever said that, that is, I mean, again, this is Jersey. So I do got to say, being that you are in the New York area, I watch Jersey Shore constantly.
Oh yeah.
Whenever it's on, I do that. How accurate is that? Even if you're not even in that area, how accurate is that just being in that state?
Yeah, pretty accurate. I mean, at least for Jersey. I'm like northern New York, so I'm like farm country, but yeah, I've seen some characters.
I went there one time when I was younger, and I remember like this was before even Jersey Shore came out, like probably like 2005 or something like that. When I went there to go, I played in Cooperstown, that tournament that they have, every summer. But and I was just like, oh my god, it is true. I can't believe it. I was like, there actually are people like this. It's not a stereotype. But no, it's classic. And hey, I wish I had the tan as much as I do, because when you're this pale, look at how first of all, look at how the sun reflects off of me. That's how bad it is, everyone. So yeah, there's that. But what I mean, being that you've done this sport for 10 years, what have been some of the biggest changes you've seen in the sport? Because it's always ever evolving. And even in the 6 years that I've done this podcast, the sport has become night and day.
So I didn't really follow it too closely up until like maybe 2 or 3 years ago. Like I just lifted because I love lifting. So I honestly can't really say what I've seen as far as changes since I just did it for me. So I don't actually know.
Honestly, that's the best response I've heard, because first of all, you're honest, and second of all, I would not want to be really paying much attention to it too, because it's just about your fitness journey. It's about you yourself. But I mean, yeah, just seeing some of the outside things, and I mean, you're a figure competitor right now. Let's be completely honest. 5 years ago, you'd be a physique competitor with that. That's just showing just how much bigger the divisions have gotten and how much different the look is. But
Hmm.
when it comes down to posing, one of the things that especially with figure competitors, is that front lat spread. Some people are born able to do it, and some people it takes them years. How long did it take for you to get that pose? Because out of all of the divisions, that is probably the hardest pose that I talk to people about.
Um, I mean, I really like my back and I love developing my back. So for me, it's not like to hit that pose, it's not very hard. I'm sure there's many more ways that I can improve it, but um I love training back. So it's really easy for me to hit it.
Well, consider yourself lucky, because I have talked to people that like literally 5 years into their journey, they're like, I still haven't found a way to hit it like perfectly where I can do it. I sort of make the comparison though. It's like riding a bike, where once you learn it, it's almost impossible not to unlearn it. But I mean, we talked about it before. One of the reasons I found you is because I had your friend Kaylee on the podcast, and I saw you in a tag post. And one thing about this sport that I do find so positive and great is just the relationship that you form, especially on the women's side of the sport. How important is that to you? Because it's one of those rare sports where the competitors generally most of the time support each other and really have each other's backs.
Yeah, it's really cool because it is an individual sport. So it's like you don't want to be completely alone within this lonely sport. So to find somebody that you can click with, like Kaylee, like I've only met her in person twice, and we're best friends. Like we talk every single day, and it started in prep because we have the same coach. And I was like, oh my gosh, you're the same age. You drive a Jeep. You're cool as shit. So it's like we just connected on every single level. So I think that's really really cool and necessary when you're doing the sport.
So driving a Jeep is one of the characteristics you look for in a friend.
No, it was definitely just a plus, though. I'm like, we're the same person.
No, yeah, I talked to her, and she is incredible. I really enjoyed having her on. And yeah, just because I find that this is such a lonely sport too that isn't talked about as much as it is. There's a lot of alone time that you do. So anytime you can have friends that are, relate, it's joint suffering is what I like to really say. Basically, when you step on that
Yes.
stage, people will realize that like, hey, you put in the work like we all do. You suffered like we do. So I think that really bonds people, especially, when you're doing this together. But this is also a sport of comparisons too. You're stepping on stage and you're comparing yourself to others. Have you found a way mentally to somewhat make that healthy, at least mentally? Because I know a lot of people do struggle with that. And sometimes, even not in the sport, they compare themselves to others even more than, let's say, the average person does, just because it's so ingrained in their mind that they're going to have to eventually compete with other people look wise.
So I guess for me, I think when I first started, I'm like, man, I really want to look like that person or whatever. Now I'm not so much like I want to look like a certain person or I feel like I'm in competition with certain people. It's not really like that. It's more like, wow, I didn't even think that I'd get this far to begin with. So whatever I can do from now on is just gravy. Like that's the cherry on top. So I think I'm just extremely grateful to even be able to do this. So for me mentally, like it's not taxing whatsoever. I never compare myself. I never really have any sort of stress that way. It's interesting. And it didn't start out like that. It was more like the more secure I felt and the better I've learned the science behind it, the less I really worry about the rest, if that makes sense.
Oh, it totally makes sense, because some people just They are very rare, but there are probably a handful of guests I've had that you can literally just tell by talking to them that they really don't care, which is very rare. So I like those people because it's something that you don't hear of often. But we talked a little bit before about some of the looks that you might get. But what is that like dealing with that? Because I compare it to being like a mini celebrity where you are going to draw people's attention just because it's human nature when they see something that's not the normal. And then you have another factor that contributes to that as well. So
Yeah.
how have you been? Do you think that having that issue your entire life has really helped you deal with maybe the extra added pressure that you get as you put on more size because you are used to maybe getting a few more stairs even before you decide to work out?
Yeah, I mean, it started like ever since I was little
Yeah.
kids turning around being like, "Mom, what's wrong with her?" So now they're gonna turn around and be like, "She's jacked and has one hand. What's really wrong with her?" So no, I think if I think if anything now, it's even cooler because now they see like, all right, she's fit and she has one hand. If anything, that's like very inspirational instead of just like now I'm not just a weirdo, now I'm like a cool weirdo. If that makes sense.
Oh, no, it does. And we talked about your last name before we started recording. Are you just waiting or are you just running to the altar basically to get married so that you can change your last name so it doesn't have to be Hanahan? Hanahan's a great last name, but just with you, I was laughing about it before and I shouldn't have been laughing at it, but it's like out
Yeah.
of all the last names to have for you, it's like, come on.
So funny. I mean, it doesn't really bother me, but what's a really funny story? In high school, they printed out my ID card, but they misspelled it with a V, and I got pulled over, and I give the cop my school ID at the time. I didn't have like my license on me or whatever, and he's like, "Suzie have a hand," and I'm like, "That's funny." He's like, "Oh my god, I'm so sorry,"
That's how you get out of a ticket right there is that you make the officer say that and then make him feel bad. Yeah.
and I did too. He was like, "Oh, have a good day." I'm like, "Yeah, thanks."
Hey, you got to look on things on the bright side. And I love that that's what you do with a lot of things because, yeah, there's so many people that just wouldn't even get into the fitness industry because they'd be like, hey, I don't have that. But just you, yeah, just your inspiration and drive. It's infectious. I'm even smiling right now. So hey, mission accomplished there. But in this lifestyle, too, I mean, you're going to deal with a lot of self doubt and body image issues and body dysmorphia. Let's be completely honest, it goes hand in hand with bodybuilding. How do you deal with that? Because that is something that I've talked to people that have done this sport for, 25, 30 years and they still struggle with it.
Yeah, so it's kind of like goes hand in hand with the comparing yourself. I guess it's something that maybe I used to do, but as the seasons go on, I know, okay, off season, I'm a little bit thicker and I enjoy that look and I love that. And then, it's also really cool to see all your shreds come in when you're competing. So for me, understanding the science behind how everything works and why I do the things that I do, and having such a knowledgeable coach makes me feel so much more secure. I don't really look at myself and say like, "Oh my God, I look awful." I'm just like, "Okay, this is what season I'm in, and that matches the season." So yeah, no really hard feelings there or anything. The one thing I will say is like people say I'm jacked, but I still don't feel jacked. And I'm like, no, I'm still tiny. I have so much more to go. And so that's the only thing that maybe I have like some dysmorphia about.
That's you damn bodybuilders too. Like I'll get
Yeah,
some of them will send me like just prep photos and be like, "Do you think I look good?" And I'm like, look in a mirror, but they are looking in a mirror, so I can't even really say it. But it's just like you're an idiot. You look fine. I know it's your body
yeah,
dysmorphia talking, but and when I was in really good shape myself, I also struggled with that as well. Where I look at those photos right now and be like, God, I'd give anything to look like that again. So I always
right,
tell people before you get ready for a show, just have your camera on shutter mode and just be taking pictures constantly. Have someone
yeah,
follow you around and just take video and pictures constantly because you are gonna miss that look eventually. But yeah, and just I mean when it comes to finding a coach, because I know you have the same coach as Kaylee, like you said, but whenever it comes to finding a coach, a lot of people struggle initially because there are more bad coaches than good coaches, just because there are so many coaches. And I've, heard so many bad stories about first time coaches. But what do you look for specifically in a coach when it comes to you? Because I know it differs from person to person, and a lot of people might want different types of coaches. But in your own personal experience, what to you makes a coach a good coach?
just their pure knowledge and background in health, because it's not, I don't just want to win, I want to win and be able to live a healthy life even after competing. Um so I think that those are the two most important things. Somebody who doesn't like sugarcoat anything, or like, I don't want to hear just the good news. I want to hear improvements and how I can just be a better bodybuilder. So I think that is probably it. Just looking for certain health markers and all of that. Knowing what I'm going through before maybe I even know what I'm going through. He's like, "Oh, these are all the signs of this." I'm like, "Oh, okay, perfect."
What's your go to cheat meal?
Ooh. Hmm. I really, really, really like chicken bacon ranch pizza, but like sushi, just average, whatever.
Wait, chicken bacon ranch pizza?
Yeah,
I've never heard of that before.
so good. They do like a ranch base instead of tomato. Oh yeah, oh yeah, and then they drizzle more ranch on top.
She's more crazy than I thought, everyone. So,
Oh, it's
chicken
delicious.
bacon ranch pizza. I'm gonna even look up and see if anything even serves that. But I mean, the chicken and the bacon I'll deal with, but not the ranch. But
Yeah,
that does sound all right. Honestly, now that I think about it, without the ranch, I've never been a ranch guy myself. But hey,
no,
if I can
you
find
could do
just
with
chicken bacon, that
blue
might work out
cheese.
for me. Blue cheese too?
You could do that.
Oh, no, 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 no,
No,
no, no.
no, never
I'm
mind.
too Midwestern for blue cheese.
Oh,
That's not gonna fly here. But no, hey, it's unique. Instead of some people that just say like, oh yeah, I'll have rice or I'll have salad, and it's like, you poor thing. What
no.
happened to you that made you like this? But going into a show, I mean, you did have the experience of doing it at 16, but still now today, do you ever get butterflies stepping in on stage in a bikini? Because that's something that like the general public, a lot of people would never do, even if they were in great shape, just because it is you're exposing yourself in a way that a lot of people really never have. Do you ever still get butterflies before you step on stage? Just
Oh,
or
totally.
nerves? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think I'll ever not. Like, I'm very good at talking in front of people, and I'm very comfortable being in front of people. But I think that's just a feeling like you've worked months and months and months for this, and now you finally get to show everybody. I'm not like so much nervous as just like excited. It's just awesome.
When you're stepping on that stage, what is that moment like for you when you finally do get to show off all that hard work that you've worked months upon months on?
I think I thought about this a lot actually for what I want it to feel like this upcoming show in a few months. I want to be much more present. I don't want to be thinking like, "Oh, did I do this right?" or "What are people looking at?" I want to like just feel everything as it's happening. So I guess it's not so much like what I felt in the past, it's what I'm looking for this time, and I hope that I can accomplish it.
Absolutely. And when you are stepping off that stage, you have all that emotions, all that things going on in your head. Where do you think your mind is at when you're done with everything and you're just drained? Because let's be honest, when you're stepping on that stage, that's not the best. Your mind is not in the best place because you're just so dieted down and drained. Where do you think that, your mind is at, especially after a show when you're drained and you're just done with it? Because I always imagine it was like after I'd throw maybe like a complete game pitching and I'm just dead. But I'm not dead to the fact that you guys are dead when it's like your brain is almost fried. But where are
Yeah.
you at mentally after the show? Because a lot of people think that like after a show, even if you win, you're just on cloud nine. But a lot of times it's like you see those interviews and you're like those poor competitors, like they can
Yeah.
barely muster words. So I was like, why do you even interview them after show? Let them have a meal or something first and then talk to them.
Yeah. Um, honestly, I think I am one of those people that are on cloud nine though. Like I get done with the show and yeah, I'm hungry and fatigued and all of that, but I really am just excited. Like I think the adrenaline goes so far that I don't really notice how awful it feels until maybe like midnight and I'm starving. Like once I'm finally sitting down eating, I think it all hits me, but I'm super excited right afterwards.
How do you deal with hunger cravings during prep?
Um, I either sleep because you can't be hungry when you're asleep, or I'll just crush some lettuce, like sugar-free Jello, like at least one or two of those a day. I know it's like the sugar alcohol is not the best, but I don't know. It fills in space, as long as I feel like I'm chewing.
How do you sleep when you're hungry? Because for me, if I'm hungry, I usually get headaches and then I can't sleep. So how do you do it?
I smoke a lot of weed. Puts me right out.
That works. I've probably partaken in that four times in my life, and let's just say I was raised by parents who my mom still refuses to do CBD oil because she thinks she'll get addicted to it to help her sleep.
Oh
So
no.
it's one of those things where don't even get me started on it. We've been trying to convince her for years now. It's like she has trouble sleeping. It's like, just do one. No, I don't want to get addicted to it. And it's like, you can't get addicted to CBD oil. But
Yeah.
it's a whole different conversation. This podcast would be 10 hours long if, we talked about that. But hey,
Right.
next time I get a headache and I can't sleep, that might have to be something that I partake in. It is legal in Minnesota now, finally, after like, it
See?
was just last year that so they were pretty damn late to the party in it. But when it comes to not being able to really go out a lot and your socialization is very limited, especially when you're on prep, how do you deal with that? Because I am a very social person myself, so I would imagine that would be very stressful for me. But how do you personally deal with that?
I kind of don't mind it so much because like what am I really missing out on? All my friends, my friends who don't compete going out for birthdays and getting drunk and everything. It's like, yeah, I kind of want to do that, but not as much as I want to win. So I don't think it bothers me as much as you would think. And then the people who I am friends with at the gym, they understand. So like we'll just get together and watch a movie or whatever. So you just have to be creative. You don't need to be missing out on everything per se, but I definitely don't want to risk, cheating or something by going out clubbing.
Do you ever find it hard for people, especially when they first meet you and talk to you, to get past the way that you look? Because I know for a lot of bodybuilders, just because it's not of the normal, that sometimes people have a hard time looking past the muscle and getting to know like the actual person. Do you ever find that to be a struggle?
No,
Okay.
no. I think I'm just too bubbly and outgoing that they're just like, oh, this is who she is. I have no problem putting it out there.
That is true. I purposely didn't watch any of her interviews, and I never do for guests before because I don't want to get spoiled by that. So that's why I was thrown off guard like the first like 10 minutes because I didn't expect her to be this bubbly and this personable. Which it happens. It's happened probably about 10 times on this podcast and like the 700 guests I've done where like I've just been thrown off, and then I'm like, oh crap, I actually got to remember what stuff I was going to ask instead of just having it naturally be go through. So I do agree with her, on that assessment, but just the training aspect. One thing that I love about bodybuilders is that they don't normally do like the powerlifting lifts, but the general public still thinks that they do, which is a hilarious thing to me. Where one of the first questions that you're going to get as a bodybuilder by people that aren't familiar with it is, how much do you lift? And they don't understand that you're not training for that size. But I am going to be that person. What would you say is your one lift that you're the most proud of in the gym? That if you were to have engraved in your tombstone, this was her most favorite or best lift, what would it be?
I really, really like a incline dumbbell chest press for whatever reason. I just feel like such a badass because I do like one, I'm good at it. Like I can do 80s for 3 sets of 12. So that's like decent, right? And
That's pretty damn good.
yeah, and so for having one hand and like stacking all the plates on there and people just being like, "What the?" Like that's just so cool. It's such a cool feeling, and knowing that I can do it and just it looks good too. Like I got the good form down and everything. So I think that's probably my favorite, and just boosts up my confidence.
Is there a weight limit for the thing that you use where like if you put a certain amount of it, like it would be too heavy to be able to use or
So for the hook thing that I use, no, it's just like the tighter I have to make it, and it's Velcro, so sometimes it does pop off like mid-set, and I gotta start over, but not too often. I can usually kind of feel it, like I have it down, but that's again why I like doing the chest press because I just stack them on there. There's nothing to worry about.
have you had any close calls where you've almost been hit by weights because the thing fell off mid set?
Mm, Sometimes dumbbell rows, like I can't quite feel if it's gonna come undone, and then my toes right there, so I just make sure I'm good to go beforehand. But
Wear steel toed boots then is what I
yeah, just like the old days.
Oh yeah. Well, I still work in warehouses, and that has saved. I probably would only be talking to you with one toe on basically a foot if I didn't wear those steel-toed boots. And the only problem though is that whenever I go to a sporting event, they always set off the metal detector, so I have to warn them ahead of time. Hey, it's steel-toed, so that's what you're gonna get when I step through. But I
Right.
recommend that to everyone to wear because you never know when you're gonna be able to need. But speaking of clothes, you're going to have very limited options, especially when you're going to be a woman that's a bodybuilder, just because they don't make a lot of clothes for women that are very muscular. How do you compensate for the fact that your clothing options are limited on the rare occasions that you have to go out? Because, I mean, obviously they make workout clothes for women, but when it comes to like stuff for going out with, it is kind of rare.
hmm there's this one brand, like CHNT, I think. I don't know what that stands for, but it's a Brazilian brand, and though they make the best fitting jeans because it's just big ass, big legs, smaller waist, perfect. So for the most part, I just order that brand of jeans and shorts, and then what shirts aren't too awful yet. I don't like anything with like sleeves on it, so as long as you're wearing a tank top, it's all good.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and if you want to talk about, I saw you made a recent post that you dropped out of a show recently. What was the
Yeah.
reasoning behind that? What happened?
So everything was going so well until my family planned a cruise like 2 years prior, and I completely forgot. So they're like, "Don't forget, this is happening in a month." Ugh. So I told my coach, he's like, "Well, it's going to throw a wrench in the plans, but we'll just try. And you can't bring any of your own food on the boat, like nothing that's prepared ahead of time. So I had like all the salt, all the butter, all the gross stuff on. Even though I was trying to eat like just like salads with some meat, it just had so many extra calories. And then after getting home from that, everything just kind of fell apart. Like I went a week with like very low calories, 2 hours of cardio, um, and nothing. The weight would not come off. I was stuck at the same weight for like a month straight. So he's like, "You're just beating yourself into the ground. Let's just do like a little bit of a reset." So I took this will be my second week of like deload, no cardio, up the food, no lifting, and I feel great. And I think this time around it's going to be a much better start without that stupid cruise messing everything up.
Well, at least on those crews, I see sometimes they do like those pose offs for fun. So I think you're gonna win that at least when
Yeah.
if you compete in that. But so you've gone the last 2 weeks without lifting at all?
Yeah, it's crazy. Like maybe three workouts at like 70-ish% just to keep me moving, but
Oh, because I was gonna
nothing
say, how are
crazy.
you dealing with that mentally then? Because I know especially when bodybuilders when they don't have that time to work out, because a lot of them that's the time where they just really they use it mentally to really help clear their mind. A lot of times they might go a little bit nutty if they don't have that workout in them.
Right. No, I as much as I enjoy lifting, I enjoy other things. So I've just been filling in my time with like reading or playing disc golf or just going outside and doing like being outside whereas I would be stuck in a gym for 3 hours. So again, like I just look at the scientific side of it. Like do I need to be lifting or do I want to be lifting? It's just like you got to beat your mind at those things.
So I'm gonna reveal something that I've never revealed on this podcast. For as good of a baseball pitcher as I was, for some reason with a frisbee, I cannot throw it in a straight line. It
No?
curves every single time, no matter what I do. I've tried everything. I even took a disc golf class in college, I mean, in high school, and I couldn't. So what I do is I'd aim it purposely, like, like 50 feet to the right, and then it would curve, and then I normally get it right. But like, I don't know how, like, I've tried everything. I might get, like, if I do 10 throws, I might get one that's straight, but like, it's not, it's crazy. I don't know.
Yeah,
I've had everyone try to teach me, but for some reason, I don't know, the way my wrist moves or way something like that, I just can't get it in a straight line.
it's all on the wrist.
Yeah. But disc golf is ridiculously fun. Like for anyone that hasn't played it, like it's one of those
Mhm.
things where if you look at it from the outsider's perspective, you'd be like, "Oh, it seems kind of lame and boring." But like once you do it, it's like, "Oh, it's actually like really fun." And there's a lot of courses around here where I live, so there. And I know there's a lot of teams that you can join and stuff, but I haven't joined a team because again, with my disability when it comes to throwing left or throwing curves, so I might have to if I get that figured out, I might join a team. But yeah, so when it comes to reading, what kind of books do you like to read? What's your favorite genre?
So you're gonna laugh at me because it's all scientific based. It's all just like anatomy and physiology. I don't read like books. I read textbooks. I'm gonna be going to nursing school also in the fall. So
Oh well, yeah.
yeah, so I'm just trying to like read up on that, and I train people, I coach people, so I want to just know as much as I can. I think it's fascinating.
I was gonna say if you weren't going to like a medical field and you were just doing that, I was like, good God, out of all the things to read. But no, I I would almost be like that too, where that's me in like history books though too, even though like I'm not a
Mhm.
historian, like I said, I'll be cramming those things out. And then I enjoy, some science fiction, that stuff every once in a while. But again, during COVID is when I really started reading, but then after that, I kind of with my busy schedule, like I've told you before, I mean, there's not really any time to read for me, unfortunately. But with time management too, how do you deal with that? Because being a bodybuilder, it's a very busy lifestyle, and you need to really have a set schedule, I feel, to be successful in this in this line of work. So how are you able to balance your time management? Because it is a skill.
Right. Um, I would say it's going to be much more complicated once I start school. But as of right now, I make my own schedule because I train people whenever I want to have clients throughout the day. I put them in my schedule. So if I need a day off, then I just take a day off, which is amazing. And then, online coaching as well. I can answer at any point in the day. So that's brilliant. And then I also bartend on the weekends. So that's the one thing that kind of throws a little bit of a wrench in the plans is staying up pretty late 2 nights a week, but I just make sure that my workload on Monday is pretty relaxed and I'm good to go.
So just like Kaylee used to be bartender, but also like Kaylee, you have to deal with drunk men a lot of the time at the bar or drunk people in the time of the bar. So how do you deal with that, especially once the alcohol comes in, some of the inhibitions kind of get low and then they'll actually start to like ask you questions and challenge you. So how do you deal with that? Because I bet you get all the time like, oh, you want to arm wrestle or stuff. How do you deal with all that stuff?
I just make it into a big joke. Like it's no big deal. It's just they usually don't mean any harm by it either. So once in a while I'll get like some crazy reactions or asked to arm wrestle, but I know that she would like really feed into it and like bet money on
Oh
it
yeah,
and do
she's
all this.
made she told me she's like sent me videos of her making hundreds of dollars arm wrestling, and I'm like, that's a nice side hustle, I guess.
Yeah, my bar is pretty tame. Like it's just a little hole in the wall, like all the regulars and stuff. So they all know me. It's the same people week after week. It's not like where she lives. But yeah, you still get the occasional people who come in the summer like tourism or whatever and they're like, "What is this? Who is this girl?"
Oh, it's incredible, and I mean, when it also comes to just the general public in general, what would you say is probably the biggest misconception that you get as a bodybuilder when it comes to the general public and their perceived notions about the sport?
Hmm. Let me think. Again, probably just like the powerlifting thing. I think people don't even between that and just like, the general understanding of steroids. I think those two things because people are like, "Oh, when you're on stage, how much are you going to lift?" I'm like, "No, that's not. It's a beauty pageant basically for muscle." They're like, "Oh, that's the one." I'm like, "Yeah." People think that I'm going out there like lifting weights over my head.
Which now that you said that beauty pageant, so have you ever seen the movie Drop Dead Gorgeous?
No.
So it's a movie that sort of like parodies beauty pageants. I have been since I've talked to bodybuilders for so long, I've been working on almost a script where it's going to be like that, except for bodybuilding, where it parodies bodybuilding and it pokes fun at it, but it does it in a not mean way. Where it's gonna
Mm,
be it's gonna just it we'll have like stereotypes of characters and stuff like that. But I've been working so anytime someone says beauty pageant, I always got to ask them if they've seen that movie. And the only reason I've seen it too is because it was filmed in Minnesota and it's set in Minnesota, so that's why it's
mhm.
I think I watched it in high school. We had to watch it for like a class, or I think I honestly think a teacher might have just been hungover one day and she's like, let's just watch this movie then, so I don't want to teach or something like that. That might have been the case, but
Yeah,
honestly, now that you really think about it, do you ever think about like your classes and realize that like the teacher sometimes might have just been like not wanting to do anything, so then they just make up
totally.
movie days. That
Totally.
happens more than they like to know. Like now that I've gotten older, I'm like, yeah, I would totally do that if I was a teacher. So I can see that happening. But if someone were to also walk up to you and say, Suzie, we made the decision, you can change one thing about the sport of bodybuilding, and everyone would go along with it, would be one thing you'd like to see changed?
Ooh. Hmm. That's a really good question. One thing that I'd like to see change.
It can be more than one too, if you have it.
Hmm. I really wish that all of the categories were in the Arnold, just because, like, I don't know, you're so close to having all of them. Why not just? Why do you omit just like two or three of them? So that's one very like um, exact thing that I can think of. But overall, again, like I've only competed like a handful of times, so I don't quite know yet. I can't form an opinion.
The honesty is something that I really love, everyone, because normally people would like try to just like bullshit an answer and then they just like make something up on the spot. But again, I have more respect for the people that just go, you know what, honestly, I don't know. Which, because again, it's very rare on the podcast, so it's very nice to hear. But what are your plans for the rest of the year?
So I am going to be competing hopefully June 8th. And then after that, in 2 weeks or somewhere around there is junior national. So hopefully I'll be doing that as well as long as everything goes okay and I stay healthy. And then I'm not really sure after that. I'm just excited to be here.
Hey, again, that is an absolute great attitude to have, and we got to talk about lastly about that damn tan because like I mentioned before, with my skin tone, it's just I can't imagine how many layers I'd have. But what is that? What does that feel like for you? Like, especially like because it lasts for a few days, but like people
Mhm.
must assume that you're a Guidette then or something like that for a little while. But
Yeah,
like, especially being in New York, I mean, it's like
yeah,
you're just getting the New York special basically when you really
right.
get it done. But what is that whole process like for you? Because a lot of people just don't understand. First of all, how invasive it is, and second of all, how sticky that stuff is. So you can't really sit on anything. But how do you deal with the whole tanning process? Because, like I said, very underappreciated from people in the general public just how much you go through for that.
So it's funny because you're in a line full of people and you're like, I'm gonna see you naked, I'm gonna see you naked. Like this is like just random people in the room. I'm like, so weird, but it is what it is. That's just part of the sport. And I think the worst part about it is being so freaking cold. Like you're really low body fat percentage. You want it to dry, so you're like in the hotel room with the fans on and everything. So I think just being cold during that whole drying process, but and then the few days after, like I try to just scrub off as much as I can with like Dawn dish soap and like a scrubby glove. And then I just kind of I like being tan, so it's not that big of a deal. But yeah, you get some weird looks in the grocery store, but you do anyway, so who cares?
Please, dear God, tell me that you've never prepped in the winter before.
um Yes, no, I have.
How did you deal with that? Well, I mean, I know you New York gets cold, never gets Minnesota cold, but still gets cold. So I know a lot of people, especially up here, they feel
Mhm.
like they're gonna die, especially when you walk out to your car and it's negative 20 degrees. But how do you deal? How did you deal with the whole winter thing? Especially because as a bodybuilder, when you're that lean, you're gonna be cold even if it's like 60 or 70 degrees out.
Yeah, I mean, with all the stimulants and everything, I stay pretty warm. But I will say, like, waking up and having to do fasted cardio and driving to the gym at like 5, 6 a.m. and it's below freezing, like that kind of sucks. But it's just another part of it.
Well, and this is also being a bodybuilder. One of the unfair things about being a female bodybuilder as well is that you sort of have to find that balance between femininity and muscle. And unfortunately, when a lot of people get into the sport, they're given this notion that you really can only have one of them, which is unfortunate. But how have you found a way to balance it? Because yeah, you have found a really good balance to it, and a lot of people just like I said, they just go to one of the other and then just say, you know what? Unfortunately, that's what I have to do, and they unjustly think that.
Yeah. I think it's really easy for me just because I do love a lot of girly things, so it's already really easy. Like glitter and pink are my favorite colors, you know. So that, and then I love wearing jewelry. I love like feeling and looking pretty, dresses and all that stuff. When I'm not, in the gym or competing. Um, so I don't think it's really that hard for me. But yeah, I mean, especially as time goes on and the bigger and bigger you get, I think it's just a matter of not letting anybody else get into your head, and as long as you're happy and you feel pretty, like, that's really all that matters, and yeah, I mean, fake eyelashes do wonders. I don't know.
This is all sport of illusion, people. Illusion and
Yeah,
makeup, honestly. But yeah,
exactly.
do you ever find it funny how like if people see you in the off season, sometimes they might think that you just gave up on competing? Because that's a story that I've heard that's just hilarious. Well, a lot of people just walk up to bodybuilders and they're like, "Oh, are you just done like doing the
Yeah,
sport?" And then you're just like, "No, it's a process."
yeah, yeah, totally. I think in actually, if you flip it around, I would say uh the leaner I get, the more business I get. So like my online training has kind of taken off with like the DMs being like, "You're so in shape, blah blah blah. Can you coach me?" And so every time I'm in shape, like competition shape, my business grows. So I'm like, you guys know that like I still have the same knowledge even when I'm not really lean, right? Like I can still help you.
Oh,
So I think that is probably like everybody in my gym understands it. So other than that, nobody really asks.
no, and I find that fascinating too, where it's just like I've always found that there's always that stereotype that is true that like the more attractive you are, the better realtor you are, or something like that too. It's like you're
Yeah,
gonna get
yeah.
it's just a phenomenon where people somehow trust people that are better looking. So I don't
Right.
understand it. Well, I understand it on a basic human level, but it's like I still don't get how it applies to business. But yeah,
I know.
it's just fascinating. But again, Susie, I
Oh,
cannot thank you enough for coming on and sharing your journey with us. It was an absolute delight. And again, thank you so much.
yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Well,
Appreciate
everyone,
it.
go and give a follow on our Instagram page. I'll leave a link down below. Buyer beware. You will get the hell inspired out of you, and you'll just get motivated to go and work out. But again, this is Ryan Johnson, DD on the spot, signing off. Have a great day, everyone.